The night Marcus Hale decided to pretend to be his younger brother, he told himself it was just one harmless lie. Just one dinner. Just one evening sitting across from a stranger who would never see him again. But as he buttoned a borrowed navy blazer in the dim light of his apartment in Columbus, Ohio, he felt something tighten in his chest like he was stepping into a story that wasn't meant for him. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet miracles that happen when people least expect them, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps these stories alive. Marcus had not been on a date in 5 years. 5 years since the hospital room went silent. 5 years since he walked out with a newborn in his arms and a future that no longer resembled the one he had planned. At 34, he wasn't just a widower, was a single father trying to raise 8-year-old Noah while juggling 2 jobs and a grief that never quite loosened its grip. His younger brother Aaron, on the other hand, had everything Marcus once had: charm, confidence, and the freedom to think about things like blind dates. Aaron was a software engineer in Chicago, always traveling, always busy. When he called Marcus that afternoon, panic laced his voice. A family friend had arranged a blind date for him in Columbus while he was supposed to be visiting, but a last-minute business emergency had grounded him elsewhere. He begged Marcus to go in his place just to avoid embarrassing their mother's old friend, just to show up, apologize politely, and explain that Aaron couldn't make it. Marcus should have said no. Instead, he thought of the unpaid electric bill folded on the kitchen counter. He thought of Noah's school project he had promised to help with, but hadn't found the energy for. He thought of how small his world had become: work, home, repeat. Maybe, he told himself, one evening pretending to be someone else would let him forget who he was for a little while. The restaurant was a quiet Italian place along the Scioto River, warm with candlelight and the smell of garlic and basil. Marcus arrived early, palms damp, rehearsing what he would say. He wasn't good at pretending. His life had stripped him down to something raw and honest. When she walked in, he almost stood up too fast and knocked over his chair. Her name was Hannah Brooks. She wore a simple cream sweater and carried herself with a softness that didn't demand attention, but quietly held it. There was something steady about her eyes, something that felt like still water hiding depth. He introduced himself as Aaron. The lie slipped out more easily than he expected. They talked about small things at first: work, family, the strange Ohio weather that could never make up its mind. Marcus kept his answers vague, steering away from specifics that could betray him. But the longer he sat there, the harder it became to hide behind borrowed details. Hannah wasn't superficial. She listened carefully, as if every word mattered. Halfway through dinner, she did something that unsettled him. She stopped smiling, not in anger, not in disappointment, just a gentle pause, as if she had reached the edge of something. Then she asked, in a voice barely above the hum of the restaurant, why he looked like a man who hadn't slept in years. The question wasn't accusatory. It wasn't flirtatious. It was observant, and it changed everything, because no one had asked him that in a long time. People usually saw what they expected to see: a working man, a tired father, a widower who was strong. They didn't look close enough to notice the shadows beneath his eyes, or the way his shoulders sagged under invisible weight. For a moment, Marcus considered continuing the act. He could laugh it off, blame work stress, make some joke, but something in her expression made lying feel heavier than telling the truth. So he exhaled slowly. He admitted he wasn't Aaron. He admitted he had taken his brother's place because he didn't know how to say no. He admitted he was a single father who hadn't been on a date since his wife passed away. The words came out unpolished, raw, almost clumsy. He expected anger, or at least embarrassment. Instead, Hannah listened, and when he finished, she didn't scold him for the deception. She didn't stand up and leave. She asked one quiet question. She asked if he ever let himself grieve, or if he had been too busy surviving to feel anything at all. It felt like someone had reached inside his chest and gently pressed on a bruise he didn't know was still there. Marcus realized he hadn't grieved properly. He had moved straight into responsibility, straight into diapers, bills, bedtime stories, and long shifts at the warehouse. There had been no space for collapse, no time to fall apart. Hannah told him about her own lost-her fiancé, who had died in a car accident 3 years earlier. She spoke calmly, but her fingers trembled slightly around her glass. She understood what it meant to build a life with someone, only to watch it vanish in a moment. They weren't two strangers on a blind date anymore. They were two people sitting across from each other with invisible scars. Outside, snow began to fall softly over Columbus, dusting the sidewalks in white. Inside, something in Marcus began to thaw. He told her about how he insisted on sleeping with the hallway light on, how he still asked questions about heaven, how he sometimes woke up from nightmares calling for a mother who couldn't answer. He confessed how afraid he was of failing his son, how lonely the nights felt once the house grew quiet. Hannah didn't offer cliches. She didn't say everything happens for a reason. She simply said that being brave didn't mean being unbreakable. That sentence lingered between them like a promise. By the time dinner ended, Marcus knew this was no longer an evening he could dismiss as a mistake. It felt like a crossroads. He walked her to her car under the falling snow, honesty finally resting on his shoulders instead of deception. He apologized again for the lie. He told her he would understand if she never wanted to see him again. She smiled gently and said she didn't believe in accidents, just unexpected beginnings. That night, when Marcus returned home, Noah was asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket too small for his growing frame. Marcus carried him to bed, brushing hair from his forehead, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel entirely alone. The days that followed weren't dramatic. There were no grand gestures, no sweeping declarations, just small, steady steps. Coffee at a local cafe near German Village, a walk along the riverfront. Eventually, a nervous introduction to Noah, who studied Hannah carefully before deciding she was acceptable because she knew how to build Lego towers properly. Marcus was terrified. He feared opening his heart again, feared that loving someone meant risking another unbearable loss. But Hannah never pushed. She understood patience. She understood healing wasn't linear. Months passed. The electric bill was paid. Noah's laughter grew louder in the house. Marcus still worked hard, still carried responsibilities, but the weight felt shared now. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching a summer thunderstorm roll over the Ohio sky, Marcus realized something simple yet profound. The blind date he had never meant to attend had become the turning point of his life, not because it erased his pain, but because it reminded him he was allowed to feel joy again. Just before we close this story, I want to ask you something from the heart. If this journey of loss, honesty, and second chances touched you in any way, please comment the word hope below. Let's fill this space with encouragement for anyone who feels alone right now. Marcus often thought back to that quiet question Hannah had asked him at dinner. Why did he look like a man who hadn't slept in years? He finally understood the deeper meaning. She hadn't been asking about sleep. She had been asking whether he was still carrying yesterday's grief into tomorrow's possibilities. And because she asked, he found the courage to put some of that weight down. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that even the smallest moments can change a life, please like this video, share it with someone who needs reassurance, and subscribe for more stories that celebrate love, resilience, and redemption. Sometimes the most important chapters begin with a mistake, and sometimes all it takes is one quiet question to change everything.